say, amen. Everybody say, amen. Everybody say, amen. Amen. Let the church say, amen. Let the church say, amen. Let the church say, amen. Amen. Let the preacher say, amen. Let the preacher say.
Of my experiences this weekend, I have to say that I had the best time at St. Paul African Methodist Episcopal Church. Mostly because of the music. The music there was really extraordinary. The choir was great, the vocalist was great, the four-piece band in the corner was great. The involvement of the congregation was absolutely phenomenal. It was very participatory. And while I'm used to going to church where there's right and wrong, everything kind of was fine there. And I did go with a friend. I had told her about the project and she was interested in going. So we went together and we sat together kind of towards the back of the church. But it's such a popular church that you don't stay isolated for long. And I actually made friends with the gentleman sitting beside me, He was probably in his 50s, lifelong parishioner, or lifelong member of St. Paul, and he made sure that I felt so included. There were a lot of times throughout the service where you were supposed to turn to your neighbor, take their hand, and then repeat what the preacher was saying to them. And he made sure that that was really meaningful. I mean, we do that in Catholic Church. We have the giving of the peace, but you kind of avoid eye contact and give one of those little limpy cold fish handshakes. And no, this was incredibly warm, and it was very, very intimate. And I left feeling like I had a connection with this man whose name I didn't even get, and he didn't even get mine. Because we were all there to do something really celebratory. And that was really the emotion that predominated the morning, was celebration. And it was a celebration of people as individuals. It was a celebration of the church community. It was a celebration of their faith. And it was also a celebration of their heritage, remembrance, and the importance of knowing who you are and where you came from, and how this experience fits in with the trajectory of your people was very important. And that being said, I was not the only white person there. There were at least 5 others, other than my friend and I, and there were quite a few people of mixed background. Nobody said anything. Nobody looked at me funny. And to be honest, it was the most included I've ever felt in a church situation in which I'm there for the very first time. It was a very moving service. During the course of it, someone actually joined the church spontaneously, which was really amazing. The sermon was on communion, which I found very interesting as a Catholic, and about the importance of it being a big deal every time, which is very easy as a Catholic to forget because it happens every week. Like, you're going to take communion. But the biggest impact that experience had on me was the utter sense of joy and community that congregation was able to feel for each other and for even the strangers in their midst. And I will definitely go back to St. Paul on occasion, simply so I can get another dose of that joy. My othering project, I went to the Spanish Mass at my home church of Sacred Heart Cathedral, and I have to say, of all of the experiences I had over the weekend, it was the one in which I felt the most out of place. It was like a completely different church. First of all, it was incredibly crowded and hot, and they don't have a good air conditioning system anyway in that building, and over the course of the day, it just leaches out. On top of the fact that there were so many bodies so close together. It was also incredibly noisy. I'm used to entering the church and it being like pretty much silent, and like you get nasty looks from the old lady in the front row if you like stub your toe too loud. But it was really noisy, and it stayed noisy the whole time. Even during the Mass, it seemed to be perfectly acceptable for people to talk, have conversations. Kids were being kids, of course, but there were so many more kids than I'm used to seeing at Mass. And also, I felt completely discombobulated the entire time I was there because I had no idea what was going on. And even though the purpose of the Mass liturgy is so that you can participate no matter where you are, you know where you are in the Mass, I was so distracted by the fact that everybody was speaking Spanish that I couldn't even say the parts I knew in English. And there were large portions of the Mass that I completely tuned out of. Homily, for instance. Have no idea what it's about. Not the slightest idea what it was about. Because I couldn't understand it. It was in Spanish. It was a foreign language. And I found myself incredibly distracted. I looked through my hymnal, the English one. I looked through my bulletin in English. I looked at the stained glass windows. I did everything but pay attention to what Padre Chesko was having to say. And as I'm sitting there looking at this from an ED 508 perspective, I realized that that's what it's like to be a limited English proficient kid in a typical American classroom. Why on earth are you going to pay attention if you have no idea what's being said? And granted, there is a difference because I was there voluntarily, but they aren't there voluntarily. And we wonder why it's hard to reach them. Because they don't understand. They literally don't understand what's going on. It has nothing to do with intellectual function. It has everything to do with lingual function. And the girls on either side of me at Mass, I think, knew from the moment I sat down that I didn't speak Spanish. Number one, because I didn't talk to them, and it was obvious that everybody around me knew everybody else, and I seemed to be in a large family group on top of it. So when peace came, when we offered peace to each other, they gave it to me in English, and I offered it to them in Spanish, but it was just obvious to me that they knew that I didn't speak Spanish. And I was uncomfortable the whole Mass. Things that were supposedly familiar to me were completely unfamiliar. There was one point after communion where the priest got up to speak again, and I was like, this isn't what goes on. So I finally leaned over to the girl that had offered me peace in English and said, what is going on? And she goes, he's introducing the baptized children. That's not something we do in the other Masses that I attend. So overall, that was the experience that was the most jarring to me, was attending Mass, which I'm so used to, in my own church. It was like being in a completely different church, and in a lot of ways that made it the most valuable experience of the weekend, because I did get that feeling of being out of place, just completely out of place.